another edition of Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. I'm Lance Taylor from the Next Round, and we do this every week. It's brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. Use that code Next Round, secure that first deposit bonus on the house from mybookie.ag. How are you, my friend?
Good. How'd you do last weekend?
I did good. We had a winning week. I'll tell you, if I would have gotten LSU against Florida State, which we'll get to that game in a little bit, it would have been great. I had Duke. I had big play on Toledo against Illinois. Should have won the game outright. But yeah, it was all in all a good weekend. Getting ready for week one of the NFL, which you and I will get into. Trying to remember the game you were on last weekend because I watched so much football.
It was about 190 degrees in Austin, Texas. In fact, the great Allison Williams, our sideline reporter, after the game said the first time, and she has like hurricane blood in her. She went to the U. She covered the Marlins. She's just awesome at her job. She said, this is the first time I had to sit down. Like I was lightheaded, Gatorade, like it was 100 and something, but the field, and the day before we shot the field, like with the little temperature gauge deal, the day before was like 160 degrees. And our producer's like, get out of here. That thing's broken. So they pulled out like a second one, the old COVID era relics where you'd shoot your temperature right on your forehead to make sure you're cleared. You can go in the stadium, pulled out another one, same deal, 160. I mean, you could smell the rubber and the pellets in the field turf. You could smell them burning. It was that hot.
Yeah. And before we get to 129 snaps from Travis Hunter and basically that same heat in Fort Worth, worst conditions you ever played in, because you were a Pacific Northwest guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever played in the Deep South, did you?
Not in college. So in college, never had. I mean, the Apple Cup, we played like 9 degrees, just awful ice, horrible cold. But no, not in college. But I mean, Arizona State, we opened up. I almost had a teammate die. Like literally, we played them in 98 at night, and it was still like 108 degrees, but it was so that dry, just sauna hot. So that was always a challenge. Yeah, and we had a teammate that would lose 25, 30 pounds of water weight. And we come and we throw a completion and win at the end. Craziest game I think I ever was a part of. We win it, convert a 4th and 17 in the final seconds. Unbelievable. And we just euphoria. And we come in the locker room, and Josh is on blocks of ice. And the doctors are frantically trying to get IVs, and he is white as a ghost. And he's locking up, his body's locking up, like they can't get IVs in him.
So it kills the celebration, I take it.
Just slightly. Yeah, took a little of the joy out of it, but they finally got it in. Plane was delayed. We stuck around for him and got home in the early hours of. Played in Miami in a season opener with the Seahawks. That was ridiculous. That was the closest, 90 humidity.
If you would you rather play in that Miami humidity or the 7-degree Apple Cup?
Probably the 7-degree Apple Cup, because that slows everybody down. And those suckers down in South Florida are so used to it. My older brother Damon, if you remember the whammy in Miami, he and Napoleon Kaufman broke the Hurricanes then like 54-game home winning streak. They had the tombstones out in the old Orange Bowl, man. Awesome. And UW went down there and ended up beating them and breaking that streak. But those guys, you get so used to that heat and humidity, right? They play in it, they're in it. And when you're not, and you got to try to somehow jump into that, man, and you're sweating just like a pig. And for me, just getting a grip on a ball and put your hands under the center's butt, and it's a big swampy mess of just nastiness. You're like, this is awful. So yeah, give me the cold, I think, over the heat and humidity.
Okay, so I didn't know what to expect from TCU. I thought that they would be good, obviously not as good as they were last year. I thought for sure they'd run Colorado off the field, and kind of blown away, 45-42. Let's start with Travis Hunter, 129 snaps. I mean, that's still – I've seen a lot in college football. You played the game at that level. I've never seen anything like that. I don't know if we'll see anything like that ever again. I mean, it's just not normal playing 129 snaps, especially your first game ever in the Power 5 and your first game of the year in Fort Worth heat, which was probably just about as hot as you guys experienced in Austin.
Yes, and I live and make home in Colorado, 40 minutes from Boulder. It'd been a pretty temperate August. It had not been very hot at all. And so it's not as if he was conditioned for that. Now, obviously, growing up where he grew up and playing at Jackson State and dealing with significant humidity down there in the South, we've never seen anything like it. And they're showing highlights, Charles Woodson, and he's got, some packages when back in the day when he won the Heisman and did some awesome things in special teams. But think of how, and even when they showed those highlights, think of how slow tempo those games were. You huddle, you catch your breath, right? You have the fact, Lance, that he did that at warp speed on offense and defense is superhuman. They take these guys
and
in
he
college.
did it on an elite level too. I mean, the guy was making plays.
It's insane. It is. In college they will measure and certainly beyond the Tour de France guys, the marathoners, just like that CO2, right? Just the lung capacity to do that. And that guy, and now they are at altitude, right? You are at 6,000 feet in Boulder. So while you may not have had the heat to get used to it, when you do, and I noticed this with my girls, right? Basketball players, and when they would travel out of state, their AAU team from Colorado, they could run all day. So there's no question that the elevation that you're playing at and you're conditioning yourself at, and that oxygen level, that he had to feel like he was just, wow, this is great. I'm at sea level and I got all this extra oxygen, but still to do what he did at the speed with which he played, the tempo with which those teams played is superhuman. It's superhuman stuff. There's not many on earth and in college football, the NFL, that could go and do that at the pace with which he played.
It's Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. We do it every week here on Disrupt the Media. Tell your friends, like, subscribe. It is brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag. Football is back, so is winning season again. To get started, go to mybookie.ag. Register for an account for free. When you register, make sure you put in that promo code next round. You'll grab that welcome bonus on the house from our friends at mybookie.ag. So Deion Sanders, I didn't know what to think from Deion's kid.
Mm-hmm.
And after the game, I thought it was really funny when he came out and he was getting interviewed and he said, everybody talked about this, Division I football and Power 5. And he's like, hell, I've never thrown for this many yards in my life. What did I throw for? 5'10"?
Yeah.
And, the kid, he obviously had control of the offense. It seemed like the game was slowed down for him. And he made great throws.
Yeah, a number of factors in play here. I got a chance to watch the first quarter before we had to head to the stadium. The opening kickoff, just the opening kickoff. Lance, if you and I were in the sports bar watching it together, I would have said to you, wow, that looks different. Colorado is flying, and they came down and were the hitter. And all they were and have been for largely 2 decades is the hittee. They've been taking that punishment. They get that 3 and out on the opening series, and I'm like, whoa. Any stop today is an absolute win if you can stop these guys at all. And then they take the ball away with 2 interceptions in the red zone, and they were going. Now, they're going to have some challenges sustaining defensively with some of their numbers, and certainly they gave up a ton of yards and points and everything else. But then flip it around. That first series offensively was just boom, 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 boom. It was surgical. It was like Trent Dilfer's UAB Blazers, right? That kid 38 of 41. Unbelievable. And it was here's a completion, here's a completion, here's a completion. I call them gimmies, right? Playing the quarterback position, I always wanted gimmies. How many Sean McVay, he will evaluate his first 15 and he will look at those and he will say, how many times did I get my QB a completion on the first read? It is my job as I set up a script, as I game plan, as I watch video, as I create matchups. My job is to get you, here's number 1 open. Here's number 1 open. Here's number 1 open. Now, as the game adjusts and they adjust, okay, then, we may have to make it. And you may have to get to second and third progressions. But early on, my job is to get you completions. And Sean Lewis, the OC, the best hire that Deion Sanders made, better than any money spent on the collectives and the NIL and players, that guy can coach.
Wow.
And he schemed them, and he schemed them, and he schemed them. How many times did Shedeur Sanders in that game, in the 40-plus times he threw it, but especially that first half, how many times did he have to go from his primary read? I mean, it was never. And the first touchdown pass, right? A third down, and they scheme it beautifully. They run a little rub route. TCU Horned Frog dudes are looking at each other like, "Hey, man, I thought you," and that just, golly, that just jumped out immediately. The efficiency, the tempo, the timing, the number of gimmies that he had. No disrespect. He had to throw them all, and he threw them in the biggest of moments. But Sean Lewis, that OC, yeah, there's a reason that Deion went and got him, because he knows that guy can scheme it up.
Well, it's pretty amazing that Deion was able to pluck that guy out of the MAC. And I remember originally when he took the job because, this was one of those things, feast or famine. It could be a complete disaster. It could be
Yep.
something that is the greatest thing for Colorado football in the last 20 years. But I was thinking to myself, I think Sean Lewis has got a better opportunity probably staying in the MAC, winning 8 or 9 games, and getting that next job. And now, I mean, he's on everybody's radar. Look,
That's right.
long season to go. We got 11 more of these games. It
Yep.
starts with Nebraska this week.
Yep.
And you'll love this, Brock. I was talking to a guy in Vegas, and he sent me this article from Dave Mason, who does a lot of the gambling out there, a lot of the articles. And he said this is maybe will end up being the biggest bet regular season college football game ever. There's so much money on Colorado minus 2.5 right now against Nebraska.
Wow.
You watched Nebraska against Minnesota. The offense looked awful. Matt Rule is a hell of a coach. I fully expect them to be ready for this. I don't know how Colorado is going to be able to handle all this success from week 1 to week 2.
Yep.
But I think Colorado's got a battle on their hand. Everybody thinks they're just going to roll out there and roll Nebraska. I don't see it.
No, it's going to be a different game for a multitude of reasons. I like Matt Rule's D coordinator an awful lot. I think he does an excellent job. I had him at West Virginia a ton, and unlike TCU, that was just grasping at straws. They didn't know. Is this going to be Jackson State stuff? Is this going to be Kent State stuff? Is this going to be Syracuse, Dino Babers when Sean was there? Like, what do we prepare and plan for? What kind of tempo are they going to play with? Who is their personnel? All of those things. It was all new to every one of us watching it and to that TCU defensive staff as they tried to figure it out. Well, now you've got all those plays. Now you have that offense. Now you have all those gimmies. And now you have in Matt Rule and a defensive staff there, one that will be much more well-versed to at least put their guys in position to have answers and different looks. And watch early in that game. How many times does Shedeur Sanders have to come off of his first read? I mean, it'll be an easy watch as you're taking that in and looking at like, okay, is he holding the ball? He's not a scrambler. I so appreciated that about his game. He doesn't try to be something he's not. He's trying to find and facilitate. But how many times early in that game is it difficult? And then, oh, by the way, unlike TCU, that went up and down the field and up and down the field and all these possessions, there are going to be a lot less possessions. So, if Shedeur comes off the field or it's a 3-and-out or whatever, it's not like, oh, I'm getting the ball back in a minute and a half, even if the other team scores. It's like, no, I may not see it for 5 or 6 minutes. And that Nebraska is just going to have to just run Sims. Like I'm screaming at the TV Thursday night, like just run.
Oh, overthinking it, man. That kid is such an athlete.
Run. Like that last interception. Oh my gosh, that was as bad a decision throw as you'll ever see. So just run the freaking ball 20 times. So yeah, he's going to run it. They're going to run it. They're going to shorten this game. And that's why I know the number has swung, right? From a Vegas standpoint in a huge way. But it's still, what is it? 3, 2.5?
Yeah, 2.5 now. It opened Nebraska 7.5. It's all the way flipped. Colorado is minus 2.5 now. 85% of the money is on Colorado. The sharps out there who know what they're doing, that's the 15% that are on Nebraska right now.
Yep.
So you're a Pac-12 alum. I think you and I are both sad to see this conference completely crumble. We've talked about the television deal, how ridiculous that was, where it is right now. But coming into the season, we talked about this could be the best year in Pac-12 history. They're already undefeated at 13-0. We knew 5 teams were in the preseason top 18.
Yep.
I also thought UCLA was going to be really good. We didn't realize Colorado was going to be on the map like this.
Yep.
But when you start to look at this, who is king of the West? Because if I was voting in the AP, I would have still Georgia number 1. They didn't look great, but does it really matter against UT Martin?
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have Florida State number 2. I thought they looked that good.
Mm-hmm.
None of this stuff matters. It all shakes out. Then Alabama 3. I think I would have your Washington Huskies 4. I was blown away with not how impressive they looked offensively, but the adjustments they were able to make. I thought Boise was going to be able to play with them and keep it within the 14 points.
Yep.
One of my losses on Saturday was Boise plus the points. But it seems like Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix just on the same page, so much confidence, so much skill talent, and it looks like the defense has improved this year.
Yeah, I actually saw them practice in person when I went back to Washington and got to see them. And it was about 3 weeks into camp. And that day, the defense had their way. And I was like, man, if they are covering this stuff up against these guys, against Jalen and Rome and Penix and a good, like that's the best sign for actually Oregon State, Utah. I mean, the gauntlet that they're going to have to go through later is if they can actually play complementary ball. Last year was a lot of their offense, defense kind of hanging on for dear life, and a couple of the losses couldn't cover anybody, couldn't do anything. But they are much more complete. Got an NFL edge rusher, got very good, solid college linebackers, got now enough depth in the secondary, some intriguing safeties. So that to me was the biggest story. I know Penix threw for 450. They look like pros. I mean, they Rome and Jalen and him just. I think that they could go across the street to the Seattle Seahawks, get on the practice field, and be like, "Yep, yeah." I mean, we're pros. I mean, we know how to play this game at this high level. Now, I mean, we're not. Let's not kid ourselves. They're not all starters in the NFL day one, but they would acclimate just fine. And boy, did they ever show that week one. Utah, USC, Oregon, Washington. And then even, as you said, that next tier down, UCLA played great defense. Colorado was the talk of the weekend. And oh, by the way, the conference is 13-0, heading into some cool matchups this weekend. Oregon down in Lubbock, Auburn out of Cal. Like there's going to be some fun stories coming out of this. And if they do what they did in week one, then we're having a legit conversation of depth of this conference, maybe being the best in all of college football.
Well, you look at Garrett Riley and how that offense struggled for Clemson on Monday night against Duke. And then you look at DJ, what he was able to do on Sunday. I know it was San Jose State, but I still watched San Jose State for 60 minutes against USC.
Yep.
And I thought they were a pretty solid squad. You've talked about Brennan as a guy that can coach. Yep. But, Jonathan Smith, man, I think I'm the only guy on the East Coast that hypes this guy up. But DJ looked like a completely different quarterback.
He did. He was able to get through some reads. He threw a bunch of intermediate stuff accurately.
Offensive line was good.
Offensive line was very good. That running back is a 100-yard-a-game kind of rusher. They balanced it out. They lost some guys right there in July, got plucked, linebacker, receiver, some guys that would really help them that I think over the course of the season, some of their depth, as you talk about these teams out west, I mean, they're right in the mix. I mean, there's many that think, and wouldn't it be, speaking of an unbelievable story, is the conference is going to disappear in January. And the two teams, as we talked about last week, most hurt in all of this, Wazoo and Oregon State, who had the least to do with it, who were the most committed to it, who spent whatever needed to be spent, who went into debt to continue to compete and build what they needed to with everybody else. Wouldn't it be unbelievable in the end?
Would love it.
Final year, if it is the Oregon State Beavers that are hosting that trophy and just, making a mockery of all that fell apart out west.
Yeah, so with Fox's Brock Huard, this is Unlocked on Disrupt the Media. So I wanted to ask you one more game before we take a little transition, because we are going to talk NFL on here each and every week, and we start up this week tomorrow night with Detroit at Kansas City. But Auburn's taking this weird West Coast trip all the way out to Berkeley. Yep. And I did watch some of Cal in North Texas, and Cal looked extremely physical. And North Texas not great, but you go into Denton and you completely dominate that game, and you run for 352. Jaden Ott, just tell me about this guy, 188 yards. He looks like he could be a problem for the Auburn Tigers.
He was good last year, too. I mean, they just kind of woefully inconsistent, do not have the weaponry around him, do not have the bodies at the line of scrimmage in their O-line. But Justin Wilcox is a tremendous defensive coach. I actually asked Chris Peterson this summer. I said, we had a fun time golfing. I said, okay.
Did he golf, by the way?
He's okay. No, he didn't. He spent his time being a football coach, not a golfer.
Will he ever coach again, by the way? I thought he was just tremendous.
If he does, it's going to be in our transition. If it does, it's going to be at the NFL level, which would be very, very intriguing. But I peppered him with a bunch of questions that any college football fan would have loved, like favorite play call, player from college that went to the NFL that surprised you the most to being a great pro. And, we just had some fun back and forth. And I said, okay, who was it in your 30 years in college football? Who was the most difficult defensive coordinator? Who was the biggest problem for you? And he didn't hesitate. Justin Wilcox.
Wow.
I mean, just like that. And look at Justin at Tennessee. Look at him at Wisconsin. Look at him at Cal. Like, the dude can coach defense. So Hugh Freeze knows this. He for sure puts the film on and goes, yep, these guys, kind of like Iowa football, man, we're going to have to go earn it. They will give us nothing out there. And they have slowed down Washington in Strawberry Canyon. They have slowed down Gardner Minshew in the air raid down there in Strawberry Canyon. years and years ago. I think this was before this was Sonny Dykes coaching Cal. I remember Ole Miss made a trip out there with DK and Shea Patterson and stuff. Kind of a weird trip. It's weird for those guys to go to maybe one of the weirdest places on. Have you ever been to Berkeley?
No, and I was going to ask you about this because I know some people that are going, and somebody was talking about this, that it's such a quiet place. It's kind of eerie, which makes it a difficult place to play. So you've actually played there. I mean, what is the atmosphere like?
Yeah, when I played, it was actually pretty full. But like Marshawn swearing on national television a couple years ago on that Friday night game, like, where the bleep is everybody?
Yeah.
Like, where did they go? Yeah, a lot of that, unfortunately, has disappeared. But I can only imagine, Lance, I don't know, a family, a diehard War Eagle from Opelika, landing in San Francisco, driving to Berkeley. And even before they get in the stadium, like, where am I? What is this place? This place is not like Opelika, Alabama, man. It's about as far away in every way, ideologically, the just people to walk the streets. It's kind of like the Star Wars. I kind of tell people like this, that Star Wars bar, like when they walk in and there's all these, that's kind of Berkeley. And
I believe it, man. I think I saw a dude that went viral. He caught himself on fire in the square this year. And, the paper straws are blowing up out there. So we don't like paper straws in the South.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different scene. But from just a pure football, and Auburn looked great. Didn't surprise me. Hugh knows how to coach offense, and kind of like Sean Lewis knows how to coach football. And week one, number one, they operated. They were efficient. They got in and out. They played. They dictated. This will be a little different test, just as it will be for the Buffs, as it will be for War Eagle. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be maybe an interception. There's going to be incompletions, right? There's going to be, oh, gosh, we're not in this kind of rhythm and tempo that we were in. What's going on? What's happening? No, real football is happening, and a defense coordinator and staff that knows how to coach it on that side.
It's Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. We do this each and every week here on Disrupt the Media. Make sure you tell your friends, like, subscribe. It's brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag. Put in that promo code. Next round, we make a transition to the NFL. I know you're a big NFL guy. Your Seahawks are playing my Rams this week. We'll start first in Kansas City, though, because it's a huge story. And I've talked about these guys because I've been doing the handicapping forever. And for a number to move, especially in the NFL, it's normally a quarterback injury. Okay. And this number last night goes from 6.5 to 5. Kansas City now -5 at home against Detroit to kick off the 2023 season because Travis Kelce more than likely is not going to play with a hamstring injury. Is he the most important non-quarterback in football?
Well, I'm not a big fantasy football guy. Are you, Lance? Are you in all of that?
So I got drug into playing last year up here with the employees. We did a draft, and so last year was the first time I'd played in 20 years.
Yeah. Last year, first time my son, right, his football team, they all did it. And he's like, Dad, you got to help me. I'm like, all right, we'll do this. Well, this year, same thing, same team, doing it again. And by the way, he won last year. Credit to Titus.
By the way, I won last year too.
Yeah, there you go. Credit
without Travis Kelce.
First timers. Titus did get Travis Kelce last year. And in this draft, he was like number 6. I'm like, well, where is Kelce? Where's Mahomes? Guys that you love that you're going to want to draft. He's like, gosh, Kelce's number 6 in this ranking, in this fantasy kind of draft heading into it. So that's the kind of monster he is. The supporting cast is not what many other teams in the league have around him. So he is counted on in that kind of way. Is it hamstring or hyperextended knee? Do you know for sure? Not that it matters.
I thought it was a hamstring because they said it wasn't attached or it didn't disattach.
Okay. So whatever it is, he's not going to, I would think they're going to hold him. He's not going to play a Thursday night. This is the matchup, though. I mean, the game is not Kelce. It's not even Mahomes. I don't know, and I know why Louis Riddick and others are so high on Detroit. Their O-line is dominant. You talked about spreads in the NFL not moving, but you know what you don't see in the NFL? Dominant offensive lines. And you certainly have never seen them in Detroit. It turned last year. And they became a team that broke other people's wills. And I watched that in Seattle. And as a fan and as a radio host, as a flagship for the Seahawks, man, there was nothing better than playing AC/DC on a Friday, previewing a Sunday butt kicking. Like, you know what? You may beat Seattle, but you are going to get beaten down. Like physically, you are going to the LOB and that O-line and Marshawn over and over and over. You're going to deal with us? Like, man, that was so fun to watch. And Dan Campbell has built that team and that kind of identity. Defensively, they're nowhere near the Seahawks at all and still have massive holes there, and Kansas City will score. But you talk about breaking a team's will. You talk about a running back that you drafted because you know with what you have up front and your receivers and Jared facilitating, like, we're going to hammer people. And no Chris Jones, the second best defensive lineman in the league behind Aaron Donald. Yeah, that's going to be compelling theater at the line of scrimmage as much as anywhere else in that game Thursday.
Yeah, so, Travis Kelce, I don't know what to expect when you look at their receivers. Valdez Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. I mean, these guys really aren't proven. Now, I went back to saying, Tom Brady in New England did it a couple of years without big name receivers.
Yep.
Pat Mahomes should be able to do it, but it's kind of an unknown without Kelce.
It is, and that's where you need that run game. And I think that guy last year, the old Rutgers player, Pacheco.
Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco.
Yep, that's where he really became an enormous blessing for Patrick. Like, you could legitimately run it, and all of a sudden, if people are playing us this way and taking away Kelce and they're doubling him, and right, then here's a light box, and we've got to be able to run it. Creed Humphrey in the middle of all of that is one nasty, burly Oklahoma.
I wanted the Rams to draft him. Hey, look, you need a physical center. That's what establishes the identity of a really physical offensive line. And I don't know. They didn't do it. Kansas City got him.
So, it's funny, like, it's all the fireworks, right? It's all the fantasy football. It's all these numbers. It's Mahomes, all this. But I just have the sneaky feeling, man, it is going to be just in week number 1, a grind it out, hit you in the mouth, slam that football, huge collisions, and more than likely the team that runs it most efficiently. I don't know if that'll be total yards, but the one that runs it the most efficiently, yards per carry, likely going to win that game Thursday night.
Okay, so we're going to jump around real quick, division by division. I want you to give me your predictions before we get into the 2023 season. Again, it's unlike with Fox's Brock Huard. He's a versatile Swiss Army knife. He was on the call when Buffalo stole a game from the Rams just a couple of years ago on a pass interference that was called on a 4th down, which was completely ridiculous, but that's another story. So we'll start first, and you know how cyclical this league is. You played in it. The NFC West just a couple of years ago was viewed as the best division in all of football. Now some people say it might be the worst. Seattle was a surprise last year. Obviously, your favorite is San Francisco. They're relying solely on Brock Purdy to run that offense. When you look at this, is it easy San Francisco and everybody else?
I think it is, but San Fran last year, that 13-win, Seahawks 9, big gap, that's going to close. I think it's more like 11 and a half, and I think Seattle's more 10. Right. So they faced 3 times last year. Seattle did not have an answer. They couldn't block them well enough. They couldn't threaten them well enough. And Brock Purdy was super, super efficient in 2 of those losses late in the year and then in the playoffs. But yeah, it's San Francisco, but that gap is a closing as 41% of the Seahawks roster are first and second year players. First and second year players stay healthier longer. That Niner roster now is getting a little bit older. It's getting very well paid. It needs Mr. Bosa to get paid and be back in the fold. But yeah, I think that's San Fran, but not by 3 or 4 games as it was a year ago.
How bad is Arizona?
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
I mean, they're the worst team in football, right?
Have you listened to the head coaches? Why in the world you would have like your own YouTube channel, Hard Knocks, broadcasting that stuff? Like, this is the year you go dark. This is the year you just like hunker down, bunker mentality.
I mean, when you cut your best quarterback in Colt McCoy, at least your best opportunity to win, just basically to trash the season to bring in Josh Dobbs.
And by the way, be careful. Like, if you think you're going to do all that, I saw Caleb Williams' dad comment like, "Hey man, we can go back to school." I mean, Caleb's making a lot of money. A lot of money.
Oh, I bet Caleb's making $5 million.
Yeah.
Why not chill out? I saw where Shedeur now is gotten a raise from 2.5 to about $4.5 million just on one game.
Yeah, Elway did it. Mannings did it. Like they went out. There was no NIL. They weren't making millions and millions and millions like these guys are now, but they kind of dictated where they wanted to go. If Caleb Williams and his dad look at that situation and go, in Arizona, if you're doing all you can to have 2 top 5 picks and you think you're going to get, I'll just stay right here. Nothing forcing me out of LA. I got a 4th year of eligibility. I'll go make another 10 million bucks or whatever it may be the following year. And I'm not going to that just unbelievably dysfunctional organization.
So the most difficult division might be the NFC South to handicap. Your favorite is the New Orleans Saints with Derek Carr coming in. Bryce Young, first-year quarterback for Carolina. Tampa, there's no expectation with Baker taking over there. In Atlanta, if Ritter's good, I mean, you look at the skill around him with Bijan now, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Who do you think wins the NFC South?
Yeah, I like the Saints there. I do. I think getting Carr out of a Raiders organization that also has had a high level of dysfunction from the top on down. Not that the Saints are a pillar of stability by any means, but he's got comfortable system that he's in. I think Michael Thomas will be a big key there. Remember how dominant that dude was?
Yeah, he was dominant without anybody on the other side. And Chris Olave, watching him last year, there wasn't the accuracy to get him the football, but he was behind defenders all of the time.
If Michael Thomas is any semblance, if he's 85% of what he used to be, with Olave and with the run game and with a veteran quarterback and with the defense that at all 3 levels has a difference maker, Pro Bowl caliber, yeah, I would handicap the Saints. But Thomas, kind of the wild card in that. Got to see him run, and I hope he can.
NFC North, most people are saying Detroit. You've got some people that believe in Justin Fields. This will be the year he turns it around. There's people out there that think Jordan Love's going to be good. I don't know if they're in, Minnesota's a team that won 13 games last year. So who's your favorite right now in the North?
Yeah, that to me is even harder than the South, to be honest. I think that's the most challenging in this because Green Bay is still a tremendous environment and a difficult place to play. And while there's no Favre or Rodgers for the first time in almost your lifetime, Lance, as young as you are, they still got people defensively, and yeah, you want to say Minnesota. You watch the QB documentary, the likability factor for Kirk Cousins went through the roof. I think, but
they won the craziest ass games last year. They won some of those games.
They did,
and then once they get to the postseason, Brian Dable completely outcoached my man there, Kevin O'Connell.
Yep. Yeah, that is I'm not jumping on Chicago. Gosh, but if you can't play defense, and that's where Detroit this year and even last year, they just could not stop people. But going into Green Bay and doing what nobody, and I mean nobody, thought they could do in their Honolulu Blue and winning and beating Aaron Rodgers and knocking them out of the playoffs and putting my Seahawks in, just for that fact alone, I'm going to tip my cap to Detroit. Go Lions.
You know that year when Brett Favre took off to Minnesota or took off to it was Minnesota.
Yep.
And then Aaron Rodgers got his start. I thought it worked out for both teams.
Yes.
And I think it could work out for both teams. Obviously, if the Jets needed that. But Jordan Love with that roster, I think they could be pretty good. So I'm not going to be surprised if any of those teams win the division. I'm going to lean Green Bay.
Yep. You could write a story, I think, for each of them. You're leaning Green Bay. Wow.
I'm going to lean Green Bay. I don't feel good about any. I don't trust Detroit as an organization.
Fair. I do think that Peyton Manning last year, and I'm trying to remember the curse that they burned something in midfield. Him and crazy ESPN old anchor, his name's escaping me, but
Kenny Mayne.
There you go. He and Kenny. I think they may have broke the curse there in Detroit. So we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. Okay, so we move to the NFC East.
Cowboys and Eagles. Eagles are going to win that. Eagles are the best team in the NFC by far.
Yeah, I thought so. So we do a Calcutta draft.
Yep.
And there's 8 of us. We've done this for years. We put a pretty sizable amount of money in, and you get points for win, minus points for losses, points for shutouts, points for getting shut out, and then points for getting to the playoffs, winning the Super Bowl. I had the second overall pick. KC goes 1. I took Philadelphia. Didn't even blink because to me, the AFC is so difficult.
Yep.
But Philadelphia, with that roster and with the progression of Jalen Hurts, I just don't see how they don't win 10 or 11 games at least.
I got to see somebody just be able to punch them in the mouth. Nobody could. Kansas City, unbelievable Super Bowl. I think if they play 10 times, I would think Philly, even last year, would win that 6-4, but they didn't. And Kansas City and Mahomes is special, and Andy Reid is unreal. And all of that story was last year. This is this year. I got to see somebody bully them and push them around before they're not right there as you said, number 2 team.
Okay, transitioning over to the AFC, by the way, this is Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard, breaking down a little NFL. We'll get out of here in a few minutes after these 4 divisions. But we start in the AFC West. Justin Herbert, look, as talented as he is, And I saw it the first ever start at Oregon. I was like, this dude is going to be legitimate, but he has yet to win that postseason game. People are waiting on that. It looks like there could be a chink in the armor for Kansas City. I know that's hard for a lot of people to say, considering they are your defending champions, but we saw how that went for the Rams last year. The Raiders, can Garoppolo stay upright for 17 games? And then, the dysfunction going on in your backyard between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson and how bad that team was last year.
Yep.
It seems like it's KC's division again, but is that slam dunk?
Yeah, until the Chargers stop charging, right? That is just that step. And we didn't talk a lot of Clemson, and obviously they're going to be a conversation over the college football season, because that was the thing forever. Clemson is just going to Clemson. They're Clemson, and they're just going to at some point stumble. And until you break that, until you silence that, until you just squelch any of that, even first and foremost in your locker room and then your fan base, you're not getting over the hump. And those guys in Kansas City, they know who they are. They've had different uniforms. I was thinking about this. We were talking about it on our Seattle show today. What about Chris Jones? What if Chris Jones continues to hold out? Would he be a guy that Seattle?
And by the way, Brock, they say there is no progression in the talks. It's not even close right now.
Yeah, and he's continuing to. I mean, now it's getting 117. Now it's like $1 million a game. And oh, by the way, you also start to hurt yourself from a franchise tag standpoint, because it is 100 and some percent. He was already franchised. So I mean, it's taking real money out now, and even however he's going to play this out down the road. So anywho, long story short, I was thinking of, Kansas City has actually been a lot more Belichickian than you think. Because Andy Reid is this big, lovable guy, right? The mustache and hugging people, and he's sitting on the.
By the way, next win will tie him fourth place all time with Tom Landry. That's how good his career has been.
Yeah, but it's Kansas City, right? It's Middle America. It's warm and fuzzy. It's Andy Reid. Mahomes is a likable character and all of this stuff, but they're pretty ruthless in business. Tyreek Hill, you don't want to take less, you're out. We'll trade you. Mahomes took a little less. Kelce took a little less. Your big left tackle, Orlando Brown, you don't want, okay, we'll move you. And now with Chris Jones, we'll see what happens. To me, as I said earlier, like that in this matchup, Thursday night's huge, but over the course of the season, like you eliminate him, he's not Kelce. It's Mahomes 1, Kelce 2, Chris Jones 3, of the most irreplaceable guys on that roster. And he's not there. And that's a big old distraction. But having said all of that, I'll still bet on Mahomes and Andy Reid.
As quick as the NFL turns, as we said earlier, the AFC South, nobody saw it coming, especially with the disaster that Urban Meyer was.
Yep.
But boy, this Doug Peterson and Jacksonville and what Trevor Lawrence did last year, and some people have got him in the MVP discussion this year. Seems like Indianapolis, although they've got a good roster, without Jonathan Taylor, a little bit different. We'll see what Anthony Richardson's able to do. Vrabel's always, viewed as one of the better coaches in all of football. And so where are you right now in the AFC South?
Yeah, I think the Jags have done a terrific job drafting their young people, the speed. They fit their environment down there, man. The Jaguar is fast. That team is fast. They looked at Trevor's skill set, and Doug Peterson is as good as anybody at doing this. And it's why he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, is I take what you do and I make you flourish. I don't do what I want to do. You don't fit in my box. You don't have to fit in my. I as a former quarterback, this is what you do well. This is the way you love to play. We'll go a little RPO. We'll go a little spread. We'll surround you with a lot of speed and a lot of talent. They, to me, are the front runner. And the volatility of Mr. Vrabel, this will be a big, big season, obviously, for him, for Tannehill, and their career arc. But, yeah, too much volatility, too much noise. Give me Jacksonville.
We know the AFC North, your favorite's going to be Cincinnati and Baltimore right there. But if I was to tell you, let's say all quarterbacks stay healthy, Kenny Pickett takes that next step and Deshaun Watson goes back to what we saw 3 years ago with Deshaun Watson, who wins that division?
Are you talking then about the best division in football, or is it still the AFC East?
Yeah, I think I would go AFC North over AFC East if that happens.
If Pickett takes that step and Deshaun gets back to that form.
Because Pickett to Pickens looks like something that could be a big deal.
It does. Give me Baltimore. Yep, give me
That's
Lamar.
Who I've got. I've got Baltimore winning the Super Bowl over the Eagles.
Yep, give me a healthy Lamar, healthy from the inside out, healthy emotionally, mentally, physically. Give him and that dude some weapons that can flat out fly and run. It was really close in the Seattle front office. right, between Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zay. And they were torn. Some that really love the home run threat and the difference maker that he will be there. But ultimately, Jackson was so refined, such a fit with DK and Tyler and in the slot and all of that. They lean that way. But yeah, give me Bully Ball. Give me Bully Ball in Baltimore. Give me Bully Ball in Philly. And it's going to be a fantastic, fantastic ride.
You know, I made the mistake in our Calcutta last year drafting Boston College late. We get 10 college teams. So I watched a lot of Zay Flowers. With bad quarterback play, that dude was a complete stud. And I told people in our fantasy draft the other day, I was like, he's going to be a steal. Now, I had a chance for him or Odell. And because of what Odell did for my Rams 2 years ago, I felt obligated to take Odell.
That's sad. You let the heart get in the way of the
I know I did. But I still think with Odell and with Zay and with Mark Andrews, man, they got some weapons if that guy can stay healthy. And if Todd Monken can come in and
it's good, man. Monken is good. Monken is really good. I've been bragging up coordinators and Sean Lewis and Andy Reid and all. Yeah, Monken knows what he's doing. Who was I just chatting with the other day? Or I was listening to somebody talk about Monken and just how, once again, he just played to players' strengths and he just set you up for so much success. And Stetson Bennett certainly a byproduct of that. And I think Lamar will be a beneficiary this year, big time.
Okay, AFC East, we know who the favorite. Well, we typically knew who the favorite was going to be, Buffalo. I still think they're the favorite. They're favorite on the road Monday night against this new look Jets team. But if I was to tell you, well, first of all, will Tua stay healthy? And if I was to tell you Tua's healthy for 17 games, how different does the division look?
Oh, gosh, that is just going to be an absolute war. All of those games. And gosh, is the AFC North maybe the best? As I look at each of those individually, they are just so fine-tuned to what they want to be, and they're all different. It's a Ferrari down in South Florida. It's a Belichickian, like, you will not know anything of what I'm doing and how I'm going about this. It is a Josh Allen, just a freewheeling and fun and so attached to that Bills mafia. And then this Jets team, as you've watched Hard Knocks, man, Robert Saleh, this ain't his first go-round or his second. He knows who he is. He knows how he's built it. He knows exactly what he wants to do defensively. And now if Aaron Rodgers can stay content and they can keep him stable, just emotionally, right, and protect for him, man, those teams all know who they are. And it is going to come down to that will come down to the final couple weeks of the season.
Okay, before we get out, your MVP and your Super Bowl champion.
Oh, boy. Oh. I don't do a lot of this, to be honest with you. I love the analysis. I love being in the booth, Lance. I'm not a big projection guy. This will stretch me a little bit this season. I'm looking forward to doing this with you. And one of my most enjoyable seasons, and I'll answer it. I'm filibustering until I answer it. One of my most enjoyable seasons in college football, well, last year was off the charts because the games, but we had a guy in our booth that was a stat guy, and he's a math teacher, and he's a New Yorker. And he sees the world in the game so differently than me. And he does this stuff that you enjoy doing at a very high level. And man, did I ever enjoy picking that guy's brain and just seeing his algorithms and the way he went about his prep and even for our college games, how he saw some of these teams play. It was just awesome. And he was so good at projecting this kind of stuff. As we walk through all of that, I'm going to say Philadelphia will be in the Super Bowl. Because I think they're head and shoulders, depth-wise, roster-wise, style-wise, of anybody else in the NFC. The AFC is just, oh my gosh.
It's a bloodbath.
It is going to be, they're going to be like the Pac-12, man. They are going to devour one another. It is going to be whoever physically is left standing at the end. Can I bet against Mahomes? Can I really do that? And is this the year with this Chris Jones debacle and you lose Frank Clark? And okay, I'll go Baltimore, Philly. I'll go Baltimore, Philly in the Super Bowl.
That's what I got.
Is that what you got?
I like it. Yeah.
Okay. MVP wise, are you going Lamar?
I think I would go Lamar or Jalen. I mean, I could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah. Who?
I mean, if Lamar shows he can toss it around consistently with these weapons.
I'm going to go MVP Josh Allen, just as a total wild card, man. I think this is such a big year for him. And I know there's chaos, and I don't know the whole story with Diggs, but I know winning solves a lot of problems. And if they can win in that really difficult division, and it starts Monday, and they shut up the Jets, and Diggs gets fed, and there's a little more health defensively. Vaughn's out the first 4 weeks. But, maybe I'm rooting for him. Maybe I love the way Josh Allen plays. But he's going to have enough marquee games that if he is left there and he puts up prolific numbers, even if they don't get all the way to the Super Bowl and they lose to Lamar as a better team and a more physical team, how about Josh Allen and an MVP?
Okay, you were talking about Strawberry Canyon and what a unique atmosphere it is for Auburn fans that are heading to Berkeley this week. You were on the 2:30 call, the Cy-Hawk Trophy. I seem like I watch this game every year, Iowa State. Yeah. It's always like a 14-10 game. It comes down to a final possession. Have you been to Ames before? What's that atmosphere like? And what are you expecting in this game where now we've got and we update it every week. We've got a Brian Ferentz tracker on total points that he's got to get to keep that job.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be about 2 hours and 25 minutes. New clock rules will come into play in this one. Two defenses that are built so differently. I'm trying to find a way to illustrate this to the offense or to the audience in a concise, imaginative, entertaining way. But if you were to say to Bill Belichick and you were to say to Nick Saban, you were to say to the diehard football fans, where does defense start? In college football, like where is the essence of defense in college football? It's in Iowa. It is a 4 down. Iowa, Phil Parker runs this 4-3 quarters defense and has been doing it forever. And they do not give you, and you have to take everything. They give you nothing, and you will like it. And then on the other side, Campbell and John Haycock have built this 3-3 defense that Belichick goes and studies. Like, I got to see what you guys are doing. So two different teams in the same state, the essence of an odd front, the essence of the even front. We were just before I jumped on with you, we were chatting with a few of the Iowa State players, and one of the guys in the secondary, I said, fill in the blank. An Iowa State Cyclone is, and he goes, tough. And I said, an Iowa Hawkeye is tough. And you got tough on tough. And it's why it's a 36-point total, why the last 6 games have all been decided by 6 points or less, why it will come down to a play here, a play there in that fourth quarter in the scene. It'll be awesome. And it just so happens that the Donald, Mr. Trump, will be in the building as well, which is going to create total, utter chaos from a security standpoint.
I'm sure traffic's going to be awesome in Ames based on that. It's one of the reasons I didn't go to the 2018 national championship in Atlanta with the first that Kirby should have had. They blew it on the second 26. But the reason I didn't go was icing there, and then Donald was showing up, and I was like, there ain't any chance in hell I'm going to that.
Trying to convince the producer to put Donald in the booth with me. It's not getting a lot of traction, so we'll see.
I like where your head is. You might as well give it a shot. Cy-Hawk, 2:30 Fox. You can check out Brock and each and every week right here. It's Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. We always enjoy it, my friend. It's brought to you by mybookie.ag. Make sure you put in that promo code next round. We'll join you again next week. Tell your friends, like, subscribe. Safe travels to you.
Thank you, my friend. Absolute blast. I can't believe how fast time flies, and we will only have more and bigger and better stories to cover over the next, 3 or 4 or 5 months we're together. Appreciate it, man.
Perfect, brother.